Hello, my name is Maya Gamble-Rivers, and I am the Manager of Programs and Public Engagement at the Center for the Study of Slavery and Justice here at Brown University. I believe this is our 10th episode in the Center's new webinar series, This is America, which explores structures and systems rooted in anti-Black racism. Thank you all for joining us for this very important conversation about the impact of COVID-19 on education in Rhode Island. By mid-March of 2020, many schools, including institutions of higher education like Brown University, switched from in-person courses to remote learning due to the spread of the novel coronavirus in the United States. The pandemic has had a devastating impact on education in the last 11 months. According to United Nations 2020 policy brief, Education During COVID-19 and Beyond, the COVID-19 pandemic has created the largest disruption of education systems in history, affecting 1.6 billion learners in more than 190 countries and all continents. Closures of schools and other learning spaces have impacted 94% of the world's student population. The United Nations expects an increase in dropout rates of low-income communities worldwide. While this has been a reality for education, on the other hand, the crisis has stimulated innovation within the education sector. We have seen innovative approaches in support of education and training continuity, from radio and television to take-home packages. Despite the challenges, the innovation we have seen could be just what we need to push a new kind of education forward. Going back to the status quo cannot be an option for us, and urgent action is required. As we near the 1-year mark of remote and hybrid learning in the state, I'm excited to be a part of this informal conversation with high school students, teachers, and community organizers as they reflect on the past year and the impact of the pandemic on the education in Rhode Island. Our speakers today include Genesis Lopez, who is a senior at Hope High, Claribel Cruz, who's a teacher at Charette High School, Leslie Arauz Velasquez, senior at Central Falls High School, and Charles Youn, who is a community organizer. So I'm going to quickly read our panelists' bios, and then we'll jump into the conversation. So Genesis Lopez is a senior at Hope High School. She works as a curriculum design coordinator for a leadership journey, helping make a curriculum full of lessons for youth to learn about racial injustices, giving historical facts and checking the mental wellness of every participant. She hopes that one day the world becomes more accepting of everyone's uniqueness, since she talks from experience. As a young girl, her childhood was surrounded in toxic, discriminatory environment. Therefore, Genesis wishes to accomplish awareness on inequities and equalities for BIPOC communities. Her dream is to become a lawyer to fight for people's rights, and she's interested in criminal justice as well as psychology. Claribel Cruz plays a role in 2 very unique high schools in Rhode Island. She is a career and college planning counselor for Charette High School and a special educator at Newell Academy. As an Afro-Latina woman, she became an educator because she believes representation, especially in the classroom. She is passionate about working with her students and their families. She has been an asset to many of her students' academic experience because she understands their cultures, she communicates effectively with their families, as well as building trusting relationships, all due to shared commonalities. In the future, Claribel is interested in pursuing a PhD researching the benefits of diverse educators and the positive impacts it can have on a student, as well as continuing to be a mom and stepmom to her 4 children and make sure they have a positive relationship with their academics. Leslie Arauz Velasquez is a senior at Central High School in Central Falls. She has a deep interest in mechanical engineering field and comes from a long line of automotive mechanics. She plans to one day break into the male-dominated field and disrupt the gender discrimination that currently exists. Leslie not only hopes to use her career as a way to teach young teenage girls the basics of automotive industry, but also an understanding of general car maintenance and upkeep. And while she's very family oriented, she's looking forward to the journey of higher education and taking the next steps in life. Charles Youn is a Pawtucket native and academic advisor with the Rhode Island College Upward Bound program. The program serves first-generation low-income students and offers personal and academic support in their journey to and through higher education. As a first-generation college graduate himself, he focused much of his professional career on supporting the most underrepresented populations. Outside of his primary role, Chuck has also worked as a success counselor at an international school and has served as a board member for the New England Educational Opportunity Association and the Charles E. Shea High School Alumni Association, respectively. He hopes to continue to serve his community as a mentor and advocate to the students who need it most. So I have 5 themes that I've kind of outlined and questions that I've lined up. I will engage panelists in these questions, which they received in advance, before opening up the floor for Q&A. I ask that audience members use the Q&A function in Zoom, and I will do my best to get through as many questions as possible once we get to that part of the program. So let's get started. As I mentioned earlier, COVID-19 does not exist in a vacuum. Throughout the last 11 months, life still happened, and anti-Black racism did not cease to rear its ugly head because the world was in the middle of a global pandemic. Within the United States alone, communities of color were confronted with the murder of Breonna Taylor on March 13th, 2020 by Louisville police, the murder of George Floyd by the hands of Minneapolis police on May 25th, 2020, the large spread of protests that followed their deaths, the week-long 2020 presidential election, or even the recent attempted coup that took place just 20 days ago on the 6th of January. The last year has been very heavy, particularly for communities of color. And so I'm hoping you all can speak to how classrooms incorporated what was happening in the world around us during this time. What did this space look like for students and teachers? For students specifically, where teachers are already talking about anti-Black racism or police brutality before these pivotal moments, was anti-Black racism a term that was used in the classroom? And so for educators, wondering if you can talk about what you were hearing from colleagues. Were they having these tough conversations in staff meetings, as an org, as a school? Kind of what are some of the enlightenments or frustrations that were uncovered, if any?
First of all, thank you guys for inviting us to have this important discussion. I appreciate the invite. In terms of 2020 was just a very difficult year for everybody. For me, I operate out of a different space. I am more of a support. So I'm not a traditional classroom instructor. Our program works to support first generation low income students at 4 different cities: Pawtucket, Providence, East Providence, and Central Falls. So within the classroom, I didn't have direct engagement. I tend to have these conversations with the students that I advise. This one was a little different for me, and I think it was more of a personal thing. It was difficult because I was still processing myself. So there were times where I just didn't even care to engage. This was already something difficult for me to process. I struggled a little bit with the events of 2020, more specifically George Floyd, because I think that's when we all saw just the groundswell of, more widespread of this was wrong. For me, I struggled a little bit with that just because if I'm transparent, I struggle with the authenticity of it from everyone, because to me, all these murders were just as terrible, just as wrong. There was something different about George Floyd, maybe because we were all under the pandemic. But to me, many of these killings were videoed. Many of these killings were played over and over. So this one was different. So it was difficult for me to kind of bring it up with students. There were times I didn't want to talk about it at all. I appreciate the check-ins. People were checking in with me because, Chuck, how you doing? But to me, I felt more comfortable just discussing this with my close friends, my close colleagues. So in terms of that specifically, I can't say I talked directly with students about that. There have been other events that have taken place that I do engage with them. The events of the 6th, I have been talking to students and making myself available for them to talk, because that's kind of how our dialogue goes. But in terms of the summer was a little rough for me.
Thank you for having me here. This is awesome. I have a bit of a different approach with my students, and I think that it began back in 2016 with the death of Philando Castillo. I recognized that if I, in the position that I was in at that point, did not open up a common space for students to come and speak, they were speaking to the wrong people or not having a voice at all. And so ever since that began happening, I felt like I needed to be an advocate, whether in my classroom space or now virtually, like, hey, we're going to have an opportunity for you guys to come digest what happened, get the real facts, and kind of just express your feelings. Are you angry? Are you hurt? What can you do? What can't you do? What are the steps that we should follow to make a difference in our own communities? And that has been really impactful for my students. And I have to also address the fact that many of the teachers that are in my community are white. And so they often don't know what to say to the students that are feeling this anger and this fear. And not that I have the right words either, because I'm also angry and also fearful, but that we are able to share that space together and say and be heartfelt about it and say, like, this is not right. We are angry. Now what? Like, what do we do with this anger? Um, and so I think for me, I learned that as a woman of color, that I need to step up and have that place of advocacy for them and also for my counterparts, like for the other teachers that are in my community to say like, yo, like you have to speak up, you need to do research, you need to like know what's going on. We're literally in an urban school. These are in the inner city students, and we need to know what we have to say or do to help them and understand what's going on. So the same with January 6th. I sent out an email to everybody like, we have to say something. We have to do something. I did it before with MLK Day. Like people just don't recognize these days that they should observe and recognize that they need to, they're working with these students. They need to educate themselves about it. And how do I, as one person, make everybody stand up and do something? And that has been a challenge for myself. And I think being able to stand up and actually say something has made a vast difference in the relationships that I have with students and just the relationships that other teachers are now having with students, because I'm kind of forcing them to speak up, to say something, whatever it may be, just say something.
Thank you. Any of our students, do you want to share kind of what it's been like in your classroom? Was there space created for you all to have these conversations? What did those conversations look like? Were they happening before 2020?
I feel like around this time I was kind of figuring out myself out, like who I was and what do I believe in. And as soon as these events happened, I saw a lot of people doing the same thing. Mainly on social media, I saw a lot of kids, either making jokes about, the murderers and other things. And that impacted me, like, really hard. When I went to school afterwards, I feel like my school is mainly white teachers. All my teachers are white. And I felt like I kind of connected with Claribel. I felt like they didn't have a way to approach it. Some of them did speak about it. And sometimes I had to bring it up to the, to the conversation. And many kids kind of said some things that were hurtful, or they just either pass, and pass the opportunity to speak out about certain things. But overall, I felt like in a way, a lot of teachers approached and did say what they had to say and how this was a injustice. But in the same way, it was kind of like they were watching their words in a way. Like I never heard anti-Blackness, racism. They just said that there were horrible things overall.
Mhm.
In my classroom, there was a teacher that she really wanted to talk about it, but I feel like the teachers were not letting her do her job because she wanted to see if her students were okay, if they're like, in the past summer when everything started happening, she texted us in Google Hangout and she asked us, how are you doing? Are you okay? Because when we were in the class, nobody wanted to talk about it, and she was always saying, like Genesis said, they don't use the words in the anti-Blackism or it's racism, and she just was like, this is something bad that happened, it's really sad that this is happening, but she did it, and like just by texting us, are you okay, how are you feeling, but not speaking in class.
Mhm. It seems like kind of everyone talked about like a shortcoming of language, right? Even either you don't have the words to say, or you don't know what words are appropriate to say, or feel like you have the authority to use certain words. But also, I'm wondering about some of the complications that come up in the virtual space, right? I think a lot of the students that I'm able to connect with, who we have these very deep conversations that usually happen in person, and how complicated that becomes when you're not face to face with someone, or be able to be in physical community with folks, how that changes kind of space for these very tough conversations. But before I want to move on, I just want to see if anyone else had anything they wanted to share in thinking about anti-Black racism in the midst of a pandemic.
The students brought up a point of, for teachers not knowing what to say. And this comes from administration, right? It's a tier, a hierarchy that we, even before the pandemic, teachers and administrators did not know what to say or what to do. And so bringing it towards a pandemic, it's making it 10 times harder, because now we're virtual. You can't see students' faces. You don't really know how they're feeling. You don't know what's going on at home. And so this is a conversation that I have the ability to have this conversation with my administration, because it's such a small school. And I wonder what's happening at bigger schools when there's a lot more staff, and are they even having a conversation amongst themselves to bring this topic to the forefront for their students. I know that you said, Leslie, Genesis goes to Hope High School. Like, what did Hope do? What did they do when this happened? What did they do when George Floyd was killed? What did they do January 6th? Like, did they come together as a staff and say, this is something that we have to talk to our students about? And so that was something that I took upon myself, especially with January 6th. I was like, we cannot let this day go by without having a conversation with students that are wanting to have a place to talk about this. So just who is that person at these schools that brings that to the forefront?
I think they both mentioned, both Genesis and Leslie, just mentioned, the educators that are within a lot of these schools. So a lot of them are predominantly white teachers that are in these schools. So a lot of the times, like we keep saying, not knowing the words, not having the words, but I think it's just a willingness and an openness to learn. I remember this more national conversation has been taking place over the course of a few years, where these conversations are happening in the classroom. And I remember having a conversation in passing with a teacher at one of the schools that I work with, talking about the fashion show, and a student wanted to do a Black Lives Matter theme. And now I'm speaking to an educator at that school who just didn't get it, because the focus was all lives matter. It was just a concept that she could not conceptualize, how we're just focusing on Black lives when all lives matter. So I found myself in a discussion, kind of, going back and forth, but getting her to see where the movement derived from, how the term all lives matter is more so just a response and a rebuttal to the fact of Black Lives Matter, and getting her to see from that perspective. Because in that situation, this student had a very amazing idea and theme for how she was going to do it, but here she was working with an educator from an authoritative stance, who sometimes these students don't feel empowered to advocate for themselves in that particular scenario and situation. So I think overall, it's just an openness to know that you don't know it all, and to be open to learn and hear from your students who you typically teach.
Kind of following with what Clara said, I think I was told that teachers do kind of have like meetings, like administration meetings, of course. And in many of these meetings, they do talk about these kind of topics. But again, when kind of Corona hit, they had issues with that, not only with kind of like, checking in the emotions of and the wellness of students, but as well as, getting the right tools for other students and whatsoever. And for teachers, most of the teachers that talked to me about it were my literature teachers, like, English and all these other classes that kind of follow that same term. And I remember that for the most part, I was pretty open to talk about it. A lot of people were muted about it. I was pretty on it. And sometimes I would literally disrupt class just to talk about these kind of topics with me teachers. And we would kind of debate back and forth on what's right and what's wrong. And sometimes even class would be dismissed and we would still be talking about these topics, which I was glad about. But again, I kind of did feel a little, I felt like a little upset that certain teachers just kind of dismissed the whole point. And me knowing that they were supposed to be talking about these certain things with students made it a little worse.
Now I kind of want to jump into thinking about, parenting, teaching, being a student, and home, school, life, work balance. And so I know, Claribel, that you're a mother, but also a teacher. And so I was wondering if you could answer this question as well as the other panelists who can speak to their parents' experience or parents they've worked with, Chuck. So what are some supports that have been given to parents? What are the current needs of teachers? What kind of support is still missing? How do we not overwhelm families and teachers during this crisis within education? What does balance look like in terms of school and home life? Has this moment simply become just a burden on families already systematically disadvantaged? And so for Genesis and Leslie, were you happy with your school's reopening plan this past September? How did your parents feel about it? Did they trust the reopening plans or even the virtual plans? Do you have any suggestions on how it could have been improved? And for Claribel and Chuck, did teachers receive any options? Was it optional to return to the physical buildings, or are you still remote? And were you happy with your institution's plans to reopen or do virtual learning?
So that's the loaded question.
Yes.
I'm going to start by saying that I don't feel that there is any right answer to what we were supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle with this as a parent. I struggle with it as an educator. I struggle with it looking from the outside. So I have 2 teenage daughters that go to school in Cranston. I work in Providence and I live in Warwick. And I was able to see 3 different districts and how they managed it, and all very different. And which one is right, I'm still not sure about that answer. What I do know is that parents deserved a lot more support than they received. And in an ideal world, I would have reduced the amount of students in a classroom. I would have hired more teachers to work virtually. There's empty schools all over our state that could have been opened the same way they opened these little clinics to do rapid testing. They could have reopened these places and allowed for there to be more support for parents and for students that do not have an equitable ability to get the education that they deserved. They could have, I immediately think of a friend of mine, a neighbor that I had. Her daughter was her first year in kindergarten, but she mostly speaks Spanish. The parent had no idea how to use or access the internet and the Google Classrooms that she had to use. So it took a lot of me going over there. I supported her because I felt comfortable doing so, but if not, the school did not provide any support for that child or for that family. And I'm sure that's happening all over the state. Could they have hired people to go to families? Could they have had schools outreach families and say like, hey, you group of people are going to be under the care of Claribel, and Claribel is going to contact you once a week and say like, what's going on? What support do you need? Just things that we should have been doing before as guidance counselors or as school support, student support, should have been 10 times more effective during the pandemic. And I don't think that happened. I don't think that education was valued before, and it definitely showed now. And then there's some things that schools did great. Everybody had access to technology. Everybody had access to Wi-Fi. People were starting to see like some things that worked. Like some students are really working really hard virtually and they do a great job. So like, what does that mean for school for them? Could they possibly have two different type of curriculums where students are able to choose like, I'm going to work and support my family, and I'm also going to be able to virtually take classes and get it done. Recognizing if classes can be asynchronous or synchronous, and how is that helpful for some families. The other school that I work at completely went remote. There was no hybrid option. There was no, everybody was virtual. You had to sign into your class once a week. You got your assignments, and some students flourished and some students struggled. So I just think it depends on like, the school should have been able to say like, these are our kids that are doing fantastic with this model. How do we support the other students that are not doing great? And what do we bring in to do that support? I could go on about this forever.
Man, I think Claribel hit pretty much a lot of points, very, very important points. And I think she kind of locked it all down a lot. From my perspective, I operate as like a support and like third party, so to speak. We support our students with academic and personal advising and counseling, and we have a summer program. And so we're based out of Rhode Island College. We had to follow the mandates of the college. So our college was remote. So I've been remote ever since. We typically have classes that we offer on campus. So clearly those had to turn remote. And we offer a summer program, a comprehensive summer program where students live on the campus of Rhode Island College to basically get a head start, see what college is going to look like, but also prepare them for their next academic year at their high school. So all that went away. And we as a program, especially me, I struggle with just sort of reevaluating what we were as a program, you know, all the things that make to enhance the learning process, you know, living on campus with your friends, having a great time learning, that was taken away. So now in my mind, did we just turn into an extended version of summer school, you know, and what is the incentive of students participating in our program? So I struggle with that a lot. We still had to recruit, we still had to do all those things, but for now we're remote. In terms of the other districts that I work at, I think out of the 4 districts, well, the 6 districts that we're in total, I mean, the 4 districts that we're in total, Pawtucket, I think, is the only one that is fully virtual. And my perspective on that, it's tough because I'm in the background. You know, I'm not a parent and I'm not a classroom educator as well. So for me, as I process the virus, I think, you know, I think just safety, just bare bones safety. Students being home, to me, is about the safer option in my mind. But I know it's way more complex than that. You know what I mean? It's way more complex. There's families that have to determine, you know, there's families that work. And I don't think we've made the adjustments in our work lives to accommodate for the mom or the dad that's the full-time support assistant teacher in their kitchen, helping their student or their son or daughter get through the lessons. You know, as Claribel mentioned, those families, those immigrant families who, you know, they were sending their students to school to learn English and get all the help in the classroom, but now they're here and I don't even feel equipped to help you with your assignment. So that puts another disadvantage at play. I think, again, there's a lot of different opinions as to whether, you know, about reopening. I do think a lot of families might just want the option, you know, of sending their son or daughter to school, even if it's for a certain amount of time. I know some schools have the asynchronous and so to speak. So this is a difficult one. As Claribel mentioned, this got thrown on all of us and we have to just respond. So I don't think there is a specific right answer for this. And the effects, I don't think that we're going to see the effects until years later. You know, like certain groups that I worry about is that ninth and 10th grade year where school is just, I'm either going to do it or I'm not. And I can't imagine being virtual for over a year is going to help that student that's already having second thoughts of whether or not they want to stay. So it puts a lot of questions on all educators across the board and families.
Leslie or Genesis, when schools reopened in September, did you go to the physical building? Have you both been remote most of this time? And kind of what was your parents' experience or your experience more closely?
When schools open, I was fully in person. Well, not fully. They call it in person, but it's basically like half and half. So I will go like half of the week and the other week will stay online. My parents were really worried about that. We kind of had back and forth arguments about whether it was okay for me to go to school or not. I kind of ended up choosing for myself because it was not doing well on my mental health. Quarantine really did took a number on me. And yeah, I wanted to kind of like trust the reopening plans, and then kind of like evolving on that, they kind of became a little harder for me. My parents and I did experience both COVID-19. I experienced it first. I had to kind of quarantine on my own in my room for like weeks and weeks, and then everyone else had it and I was okay. And it was kind of hard for me because my school had these terms and these policies that made it really, really hard for me to be at school, since I kind of agreed to be in person, half and half and all that. I was supposed to be showing up and I couldn't because, again, my parents were sick. I didn't find a way to go to school, and I was just getting absent. And I'm still trying to work on it till now, to present. But yeah, I think options for parents were kind of hard too, since for you to sign up your kid, it was online. Many parents did not know how to do it. I had friends that did wanted to do it online, but didn't know how to do it because their parents had these messages and links and all of that, and they couldn't, they didn't understand them. So yeah.
That's real.
Did you have a computer before the pandemic happened? Sorry, I'm asking a question. Just curious.
Yes, but it wasn't, wasn't all that. Wasn't good.
It was issued from the school?
No, I had my own computer. Afterwards, I did get a computer from the school, and that one itself, I don't know, the internet was not working. And mainly with my siblings as well, like, connecting to their schools, the internet was really, really slow.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Leslie?
How Genesis said the school gave us computers, and I have a little brother, and I have my own computer, so I didn't have problems with like connecting online to class. But my brother had struggled a lot with computers because my mother only speaks Spanish, and I'm always there to help my brother. If he needs help, he comes like right to me, because sometimes even when we try to explain to her what is like the question that he's having, translated from English to Spanish is hard. And my mother, she studied in Nicaragua. It was mainly Spanish. And I also studied in Nicaragua, my middle school, my elementary school. So it's different from what he's learning right now to what I learned before. And sometimes we struggle a lot with that. And also how you said about the teachers didn't gave a lot of help to parents that don't speak English. Um, all the links are in English, or some links are in Spanish, and they're not even really good translated. And it's hard for us to like, because sometimes there's like a link that, oh, your student was absent this day, and then my mom was like, oh, you were absent that day. Why? But I wasn't like absent that day, and I struggle also with distant learning because in my school, we are all distant learning. We're not going back in school. I think they're planning to, but my mother and I, we do not agree with that because how Genesis said, with the COVID, it's like hard to go to school. My mom and I, we got COVID, and thank God my brother didn't get sick. But when I had COVID, it was like hard for me to like log into class because we had to log in at 8 in the morning into class, and sometimes it was like I didn't feel like getting up because the pain was really bad. So I also struggle with the respiratory things now because of COVID. And I feel if we go back as students, they don't follow the rules. When I had to do the SAT, the students were had with their mask like right here, or they don't put on right. And I feel like if we go back, it's gonna hurt us more than everybody else. And I feel school needs to listen more to students, because at the beginning of September we had this calendar. It was like students from A to M last name, they were having class Thursday and Friday, and then the other student had it like the other days, and one day it was like all of us together. But with that, they decide to change because not a lot of students were showing up, and I feel like that didn't help a lot because a lot of students, the days that they didn't have class, they were working, trying to support their families, and they took that away from them. And I feel that that was not right. I have my friend, she worked the day that she didn't have class because she's an only child, and her mom is like, it's that's the only support she has, and she wanted to help her mother like having a job. And now that she has to show up every single day to class, it's like really hard for her and for her mom too.
Thank you. Thank you both for sharing that. I think it kind of leads into another kind of question I have about out of school resources and kind of providing holistic opportunities for students. And so children come from very different backgrounds and have very different resources, opportunities, and supports outside of school. And, the pandemic has highlighted pre-existing conditions such as food scarcity. A lot of schools, and I was a student who very much depended on free breakfast and free lunch when I was in school, inadequate access to physical and mental health, problems with housing stability, access to educational technology and the internet. And so in terms of education and a redesign, this moment asks us to think more holistically about the entirety of students' lives, right? And so it's important that students have and children have access to healthcare, food, clean water, stable housing, out of school enrichment opportunities in order to thrive academically. And so I'm wondering, what are some of the things that your schools and teachers are learning about the needs of students, whether they need to go to work and provide for their families, right? Especially during this time when we're seeing large numbers in unemployment. What kind of emotional and mental health supports are being provided to students and teachers? How do we make a system of education and schools more individually responsive to the needs of students? Because we know that like one size does not fit all, right? So not every child is thriving with remote learning. And so how do we meet the needs of students and give them what they need both inside and outside of the classroom? I feel like, some of y'all are started to talk about it. And so I was wondering if we can spend some time thinking about that, kind of what resources are and individualized, and not just simply giving students IEPs, but how do we really rethink our system to meet the many needs of our students?
I feel like one of them that's a must is educating teachers. A lot of teachers that I knew, I mean, a lot of them really did not know how to use, a Google Classroom or make a Zoom meeting even. A lot of them actually miss having attendance itself. So sometimes, yeah, as Leslie said, I'll be called as I was absent, but I wasn't. And yeah, a lot of like material wise, a lot of them kind of printed books out and would sell like the whole book out and make it hard for kind of like students to look into like the work and kind of go through it. And yet again, I feel like I was kind of lied to in an own way because again, it did really do a number on me, this whole Corona thing. And I think one day I decided, you know what, I need a mental day. And I knew that my teachers had emailed me about like, you can take, if you're not feeling well, take a mental day and all that. And I did, just to find out that most of my teachers did put me absent. even though they did confirm that they will let me have a mental health day, you know. A lot of them did understand. I had to text them on my own and let them know. But yeah, I feel like one of them, where we have to start is actually teaching teachers how to use, you know, technology. And it's kind of something that it shows and it resembles that we failed as a whole institution, because, you know, before even, you know, Corona happened, we were supposed to, you know, use computers and learn how to use them. And it kind of resembled the fact that they did not check on that to other people.
I think a lot of that holds true. I also, because we're all thrown into this and forced into this situation, I do think this is a perfect opportunity to reimagine how we view education. You know, do we need certain things? Do we need the Monday through Friday 8 to 3 schedule? You know, I'm not saying we don't, but I think it is an opportunity for us to re-examine that and look at that. If I was to look at silver lining, I do think the whole, you know, emergency code red push to digital and technology is more of an advantage and a plus in the long term. You know, listen, and Genesis mentions it, that, you know, her teachers didn't know how to use these platforms in Zoom. And I'll just tell you, if the pandemic didn't happen, trust me, they weren't probably ever going to learn how to do that. So I think this one forces them to do that. I have a goddaughter who's in first grade, and to see her using Google Docs and like uploading stuff on Google Classroom, to me, I think in the long term, things like that are going to be powerful because we had this push to use it. The effects, I'm not too sure, but I also look at this as an opportunity, you know, something like there's, you know, kind of another underrepresented population, I would say, is those students that have to either homeschool, or those students that need to leave the traditional system for whatever reason, whether it's, you know, pregnancy, whatever. I think this is an opportunity for us to focus on that, to build up that system, that homeschooling process that could be partnered up with the district to enhance it. We don't have the answers. We know we have to be comfortable with the fact that right now, in this first year of the pandemic, that we don't know exactly how it's going to go, but I think it's about fine tuning those things, and seeing how we can progress and change for the future for the better.
Right on, Chuck. You mentioned the time. So why are we sending our kids to school at 7:30 in the morning? Like, what's the purpose of that at all? There's research that says that most students are not able to even learn until after 9 a.m. So why are we still signing? Or if anything, that's one of the things that they should have learned from this. Like, there's no reason for even educators to be at school at 7 a.m. for students to be there at 7:30. Another thing that people should be looking at is curriculum. Is everything that we are setting out to teach our kids really as important as they make it seem? This is going on while students are taking SAT now in April. But last year, the kids didn't take SATs. And now the colleges are not requiring SATs. So do we really need them? Is it really as helpful as they say that it is? Is it really making a difference? I hated taking tests. I'm awful at it. And so are you saying that my quality of education is not worthy because I did so poorly on a test? But come see me in my job. Come see me in how I get my work done. And I can show you that I'm capable. It shouldn't be based on a test. And I always tell my kids on the SAT, it's not about how smart you are. It's about, do you know how to take this stupid test? And it is really not worth it. So curriculum, time for school. Do we need this testing crap besides for data? I think that now they're going to see that data is going to plummet. It's going to be awful. Like, let's be real. And so what are they going to do with this awful data? Is what I'm curious about. Are you now going to give schools more money to offer more resources? Like, what's going to happen when you get this awful data from our students that have been struggling with a lot? And another thing that I think has been put to the top tier forefront is mental health. If you were struggling with depression, you were having any type of mental health issues in any capacity, you had the ability, if you had insurance, to get a therapist, a psychologist for free. When has that ever happened in our lifetime? For me, never. So the fact that we were able to advocate for students, like if you have any type of insurance right now, if you do telehealth of any kind, it's free. It does not go across your insurance. Like, you can do it now for free. That made mental health come to the forefront. Can we still do better? Absolutely. But that was a start. And I don't think that ever would have been the issue or been the circumstance if the pandemic didn't happen. And for educators, it became a time for us to really learn, right? Lots and lots and lots of professional development occurred. Our administrator from our school was like, everybody needs a new desktop screen, everybody needs a new Chromebook, everybody needs a moving cart, everybody needs a mouse and keyboard. Like, everybody needs all of these things in order to function and be able to access our students. Why didn't we have that crap before? Why did it need for us to be struggling so bad during this pandemic? Months later, are you saying, like, here's all these resources? We should have had them before this even happened. And so professional development on how to use these things, even RIDE, they threw out all these professional developments on how to use these online tools. Where were these professional developments that are helpful for the last 10 years? I've been in education for 12 years. Why didn't you give me access to these helpful resources in the past? Why did you wait till now? And now I'm trying to figure it out with my students during a pandemic. Like, it's not fair to our kids. It really is not fair. And so just like there's a lot of inequities in different districts and different schools, but there's also a lot of inequities within the school system from our administrators. And now I hope that they're recognizing it and they're gonna like advocate more for us and recognize, like, we're working our butts off as teachers. I have a hybrid model. I sometimes have 6 kids in class and I have 20 online. That is hard. And it's just like, I feel like I'm not doing a good job. It's not an equitable education. And do I know what the right answer is? Send everybody home and let's all do it hybrid. Let's all do it virtual. But then it's just like, I don't require my kids to turn on the camera. I don't think that they should turn on the camera. I really feel like, as an Afro-Latina woman, I don't want you in my house. And as a teenager, I wouldn't want you to see inside my house. I wouldn't want you to see my mom walking around in her bata. I wouldn't want you to hear my little brothers and sisters talking about whatever. I wouldn't want you to see what I was eating for lunch. I just wouldn't want you in my house. So I tell my kids, as long as I call your name and you respond, I'm with you. I respect it. Let's move on. But I know so many educators are like, I'm kicking you out of class because you don't have your camera on. It's like, what? Like, you don't know me. You don't know what's going on in my class. Don't treat me that way. That's inequitable. That's not okay. So just, there's like a lot of things that have been brought up that I feel that would never have been brought up because of the pandemic, if the pandemic didn't happen, I should say. So, and technology being the top tier, like, look at how far we're coming with technology. I mean, I hate Chromebooks, but they're giving kids an access to something, right? Like, can we move from Chromebooks into something better? Like, I feel bad for the kids. They're looking at, what is it, a 12, 14-inch screen. At least I have like a 17-inch screen, at least. Like, they have these little Chromebooks that do very bare minimum. So at least they have access, is my point. Again, I could go on forever.
Can I kind of follow up real quick on that?
Yeah.
As somebody who just started working with curriculums, it's not the same thing as school, but it's true. I see so many classes and mainly as a senior, I see so many classes, so many electives that I don't know why I'm taking, when I could be using my time to either do something at school or work with someone. Like for example, and again, they're kind of pushing a little bit, and at the same time, not with seniors. At least my school, I think they should have like at least put a little bit more attention on us, because again, we're like trying to do this whole college process through a screen, and oh my god, I've never been more stressed in my life. But mainly also when it comes to, oh, are you taking the graduation requirements? Why do we need these? Like literally, I see juniors, for example, my school, we do this thing where it's like a presentation, a senior project. And I see many juniors kind of like, and even seniors who didn't get to finish the class last year because it became too hard for them, uh, like actually struggling, like, to try to finish this whole project that they have to like present to a class to prove what? To prove that you're capable enough to, be on your own, capable enough to write a whole like, project, essay, whatever. I don't think those are things that we need right now.
Mhm.
And it's kind of, again, messing a lot with the schedule. So I understand that many and even all grades do need help. As for high school, I feel like mainly the ones that we should put attention to are freshmen and seniors, because again, I have a hard time even talking to my counselor. I email him every single day and he barely responds, and sometimes there's things that they don't even know what to do about. And
Mhm.
again, it is a lot, and yeah, it's something that we should look upon curriculum for sure.
I
Yes.
want to follow up with what Genesis just said about the counselors not responding to you. I had to uh, Chuck is my counselor for my summer program. I had sometimes to email him because my school teacher or my school counselor was not answering me. And he was a lot of help with the college stuff. Like, because when I emailed my counselor from my school, he responded like 3 weeks later. While Chuck, he was always telling me, oh, if you're gonna do the FAFSA, you gotta do it this way. And if you want, I can help you. And we did it together. It was a lot easier than texting or just emailing my counselor. And also with I think, I don't remember who said it at the beginning about the schedule like being at 8 in the morning or 7 in the morning. That is true. Like there's some students that they fall asleep in class when they, because we don't turn our cameras on. There's students that they don't do it, and it's understandable. And they just fall asleep because it's so early in the morning that we don't know how to process everything. And at the beginning of the pandemic, when we started like doing the distant learning for my school, we started class at 12 in the afternoon to like 2:30, and that works so well for us. Some of us really struggle a lot, but the attendance was doing great. And now the attendance is not doing great because we had to wake up early and it's not helping us. Also like with jobs, like I said before, some students they take the time to like, oh, I don't have class this day, I go to my work right now. And with the mental health, it was really a lot because parents, they don't know what to do for us, like, oh, we want to help you but we don't know how to help you. And also teachers, um with my Spanish teacher, I had to email her and tell her I really don't know what I'm gonna do because I was failing her class, and she told me, take your time, I will grade everything. If you need a week, you can take your week, I'm not gonna mark you absent. And she really understand like what was happening. But the other teachers were like more like, oh, you need to turn your work in right now, this is not fair, we are learning with you guys. And it's like, we know that it's a hard time for you, but it's also a hard time for us. And how Miss Cruz said before, this should have been teach before the pandemic about how using a Chromebook, about how you have to set up a meeting. Because I sometimes I wanted to help my teacher because she struggled a lot with like setting up meetings, how to create a Google slide, because she was always doing in books and everything. And I feel like this should have been easier before. They should have teach all of these things before the pandemic.
Quick follow-up. I'm sorry if I'm taking too much of the time,
No,
but
you go ahead.
I kind of well, fully agree with Leslie. My counselor, I would like, email him. And again, I do ETS. So my college counselor was always there for me. Like I would like text her and be like, I need help. I missed a deadline. And she was like, okay, let's make a Zoom. She would like name the Zoom for just both of us. And we will like start, we will start like at 1 and like end up at 6 and even 4, just like quick everything and finishing everything out. And I do appreciate her a lot, but yet again, I understand that they might be struggling in many ways, as all of us are, and kind of talking about mainly I don't know who brought it up, but I remember we were talking about like certain kids that have certain issues, not issues but inequities and stuff. ESL students in my school, for example, they have to go every single day. I don't know why they go A days and B days, and it actually kind of covers for every single grade. I don't know why they have it like that. I guess they do need extra support, and I understand that, but at the same time, they're putting their lives in danger in a way.
Kind of everyone touched on just the pure struggle, right? Whether it's like getting up at 8 a.m., staying up to date with your work. And I know, Chuck, when I had reached out to you earlier, you kind of talked about kind of how your role has shifted in trying to support and locate students. So I'm wondering if you can talk about that quickly.
As a supportive program, we had to completely reshift how we're working with students. So for me, the biggest disadvantage for this entire pandemic for me is to not see my students daily at their school, just because that's what, I don't know. It was the consistency of being able to see Chuck. I'm in my school right now, but I know that I could just kind of relax with Chuck. Chuck is going to ask me about everything. He's going to ask me about, school, of course, but then he's going to ask me about the basketball tournament that they had, or weren't you crocheting these gloves? How far are you? You know what I mean? So I'm asking about those different things. So not being in the high school puts me at a disadvantage. So one of my main things, yes, we are an academically driven program, but one of my main things whenever I'm meeting with students, I started to like rarely ever talk about school. Like my main thing was leading, like, how are you? What's going on? To find out their health and well-being was number one. I'm sorry. Of course, how you're doing in your class is important, but I'm not really there to talk about, your chemistry assignments that you missed because you're teaching. You know what I mean? Like those things are topics, but let's see why. As Leslie mentioned in Genesis, there are times that I just couldn't go to, if you're the student, you just can't go to class for whatever reason. Let's talk about it. Are things good? What do you need? So that's been my focus in terms of how I work with students now, primarily to find out their health and well-being, but also some districts and some schools that I've worked with have kind of rallied around and found different ways to help. So I'll use Leslie's school for an example, CF. I think a lot of the staff that work there are amazing, but I forget the term. There's a gentleman, Mr. Coach Fennell and Jackie. I can't remember their roles, but they pretty much work with students outside of classroom, the holistic kind of way to work with students. And they've been keeping up with students on so many fronts. They're calling, they're texting, they're just showing up. And one of the things they're doing is including all of the partners for particular students in that email, so we can all add our insight. You know what I mean? So I think it's about trying to be creative to reach them, and not solely the academic arena. We're looking at the holistic student. How are you? Because if I'm not well outside, I don't know if I'll be able to produce what I need to produce inside.
I have to completely agree. It's been a challenge the way that I'm used to developing relationships with students virtually, right? Like in school, you can walk by, you hear something, you add your input. You see somebody drawing something, you say, can you draw me something? Somebody's eating something you never seen before, you ask about it, you learn about that culture. Like, just being able to develop that relationship has been extremely challenging. But you figure out creative ways to do it. I know for me, a lot of the times, whatever I'm doing or whatever I'm into, I show the kids. So like, guys, this is what I'm eating for lunch. Have you ever eaten this before? Tell me what you're eating for lunch. Or like, try to include them in whatever I feel is important in my life. And then try to like pull it, like, okay, give me a little bit, guys. Somebody answer me. And that is it's a challenge. It's really a challenge. But also in my head, I'm thinking about, I don't know what else is happening at home. I don't. And it can be 10 times harder than I could ever imagine for them. So I get it. So it's just about, Chuck said it best, being creative. How do we creatively help kids? I've done door knocks, like, hey, just wanted to check in. You see me, I see you. Are you okay? Do you need anything? Let's go to the store and buy a patelito. And like, let's just, let's have a conversation for a few minutes, 6 feet apart, and, make sure that we're okay. Or it's like, do you want to do a private video chat and just talk to me about whatever's going on? So just like figuring out different ways to stay connected.
Mm-hmm. Which brings me to my last question about connection. And so I'm really thinking about out of school learning and engagement, right? So I know in my own personal experience as an alum of the Providence Public School District, I depended a lot on out of school learning opportunities, whether it was, Youth in Action, which is a youth organization that really made me fall in love with youth work and demonstrated to me the importance of youth voice, or College Visions, which is another great organization in Providence that helped me navigate the college process for undergrad, but also for grad school, like even graduating, like, what's next, and walk me through that entire process. And so I know, Chuck, you are connected and do a lot of amazing work with Upward Bound, which my sister did when she was in high school. And so I'm wondering if you can all talk about the role of out of school learning opportunities and organizations during this moment. Have they found innovative and creative ways to continue to serve students? Can you students talk a bit about kind of the different after school or out of school learning experiences they had before the pandemic, and what has that transition been like since the start of the pandemic? I know that there's been lots of issues with attendance. There's a truancy spike in high schools, which also is a hot mess, but we could talk hours about that, because somehow punishing students for not showing up solves the problem. And so I'm really thinking about kind of out of school learning environments, and how are students maintaining a sense of community and connection in the midst of the pandemic. So if you all, as you feel moved, talk about that.
Yeah, I think I can start, because our program is solely predicated on that. So that's one thing that we had to focus on and re-examine how we were doing. Like, to me, I'm an alum of the program that I work for as well. And I was alum with Missionaire, who was amazing. But yeah, that was the cornerstone of our entire program. Like I said, that I think that the whole point of our program was to enhance the learning process, to offer that first gen low income student a different way to look at education, to get them ready for college. And we have a comprehensive summer program that we offer, but that was taken away. So we had to kind of look at how we did it. So one of the things that we were coming off the heels of the spring. COVID is brand new, but we still have to offer something. So I think we worked on our classes in terms of making them less intensive. Like, that's what it came down to. And I think the conversation needed to be around, we're not dumbing anything down. We're not watering anything down. I think we are looking at our situation and trying to determine how can we continue to deliver this in a reasonable way. That's what it came to. It needed to be a reasonable way. That the camera conversation that you guys are talking about, this was a conversation among us as well. And I think we have a little bit more autonomy because we work a little bit independently from the districts So that was just a conversation in a staff meeting of, listen, having a camera on is cool, but is it necessary? How necessary is it to ensure that this student is getting it? Yes, you want it, but is it necessary? Is it vital? And when we came to real live, solutions, then it's like, no. Like I think Claribel has a perfect solution to that. As long as I call you and you respond, then I'm good. We also offer students, when they participate in our program, we give them a small stipend just to, pretty much. So in the span of a summer, they get $15 a week, and that just for meeting your expectations for the program, we give you $15 a week on a typical summer. I think it was important for us to rethink that. We knew a lot of families were struggling. We knew that when we have control over them being on campus, so they live in the dormitory, so they have free room, they eat at the cafeteria, they have free board, they're with us from Sunday evening to Friday night afternoon on a typical summer. Now that all that wasn't happening, we knew that they were still struggling. So we found a way to, within the guidelines of what we are responsible for, we found a way to, the money that we would have spent to have them living on the dormitory, as well as the meals that they would have had for 6 weeks, we were able to monetize that and give that to the families, as well as for internet and transportation. So I think, as opposed to getting 15 a week, I think in the course of the summer, they were able to get pretty much a good amount to really support their families. And that was important to us, rethink how we're doing things. How can we be the best support at that moment?
Mhm.
I want to follow up because I'm in Upper Bound too. And being in Upper Bound this summer, it was hard because how Chuck said, we were like used to like having fun this summer. Like we were always like, oh, if we need help with something, you go to your friend that's like to the next room or something like that. And this year it was a lot harder than before. And having the teachers like understand that sometimes we cannot show our face because, oh, maybe my brother is going around the room, or maybe my mom is like doing something, or it's cooking, or they're yelling, or they're just like listening to music in like while I'm in class. It was really helpful because when before summer the teachers were like, you have to have your camera on, you need to just show your face because we need to know that you're here, that you're paying attention. But in summer, and seeing that our teachers understand that we sometimes cannot really show our face or show like our house, it was really helpful. Also, like I said before, Chuck was always there for me if I needed something. If I needed to complete something, he was there for me. So it was a lot of help.
For me, it was kind of different. Like I actually had a good experience this summer, kind of like working with kind of after school or summer programs. I did college vision prep actually, and it helped a lot. I did Tubbs pre-college program, which was a leadership program, and I did as well as Ride. And it was good for the most part. I kind of saw like the I how to explain it. I kind of saw the good part of it, which was that I didn't have to leave my house, and yet I was like getting all this information, and I was learning so many things. But then, kind of coming back to school, it kind of ruined it a little bit because again, these programs didn't have the camera required. They will let you, let's say, cuss or whatever when you felt like it was like the right moment to say something. And then to come to school and see that everything kind of changed, it was kind of hard. And then I kind of wanted to keep going. Thankfully, I did find the job that I'm doing right now, but I kind of wanted to do more things after school, and now they're becoming accessible. But back then when I wanted to do it, there weren't many options or information about it.
I would say a couple of the programs that the students that I work with have participated in are Center for Dynamic Learning. They're an exceptional program of teaching students how to use different types of tools. They ended up mailing students tools and giving them projects to do on their own at home, and also teaching them virtually, which was pretty cool. I was really worried about them because it's mostly a hands-on program, and students have to participate. They go to different businesses and build things for them, and they figured out a way around it to still support the program and provide the opportunity for students, which was awesome. At Noel, we have a great partnership with AS220. They are phenomenal. They do a lot. They were doing things virtual before this happened, and they just enhanced their programs tenfold with the pandemic. And it's for students everywhere, anywhere, whatever you're interested in, they will find something for you to support you. College Visions, I know Genesis, you mentioned that. They're amazing. A lot of our juniors, they're applying now for Prepare RI, which is an internship financially based program. They get an internship and they're doing it virtually still. And they get paid to do it. And it's for juniors all over the state. And what else? I think you said, and College Crusaders. If you guys are in College Crusade, like, I have seen these people work so hard to make sure their kids have everything that they need, especially our seniors. This has been one of the most challenging times to be a senior, to apply for colleges. Like last year's kids, it was the end. They had already done, excuse me, they had already completed their applications. It was just deciding where they were going to go. But these seniors this year, it has been from the beginning, making sure your college essays are done, making sure FAFSA is completed, making sure you have done all the research that you need, your Common App. I don't know how, I feel like I can verbatimly tell you everything on the Common App because of the hours that we spent on it. And, you know, providing office hours, after hours for families, for parents that don't know what they're doing. You know, I had opportunities, I had hours from 6 to 8 p.m. Like, come join me and I will help you fill it out. With the FAFSA CSS profile. Like, just College Crusaders are phenomenal. So those are just a few of the ones that we've been working with. And then, you know, just making sure that students are able to ask their questions to their places of employment. That was something that we really had to like dig deep for some jobs. Like, can you provide this opportunity for my student to still work from home? Is that something that you do? So that, I think, is a learning curve for many careers as well.
And can I just add to Claribel's point of the college process, because that's primarily what we do and how we work with students. And this pandemic has forced, again, it's forcing students to rethink a lot of things. You know what I mean? Like, we've already kind of been on a trend of families reevaluating college. You know, is this really worth this investment? You know, I think we're beyond the days of, even when I was in school, but my older siblings and just that generation of the, you know, the pretty much the pipeline was, you go to high school, finish high school, you go to college, finish college, you get a good job. That's no longer the story. So, you know, I think that this pandemic has, one, accelerated that process. And you have a lot of students, even like, one of the things, I'm working with juniors now, and we're just getting the college process started. I find myself, for the first time, as we're doing research, students are like looking at determining, one, a lot of students are considering just staying here, which is very, you know, I agree. It's a very smart way to look at it. But a lot of students, some students are even looking at the states that they're going to, and how has this state handled the virus? What, you know, the political implications of that. Does this make sense? Their governor is telling them to do this, and this is what I'm seeing. So some of these things are coming into play as well. This pandemic has it's changed a lot. It's forcing people to reevaluate everything. You know, one thing I've learned, and I was meaning to bring it up earlier. One thing I think, just going back to the education here in general, the pandemic has pretty much highlighted how essential teachers are, period. You know, teachers are essential workers. Like, yes, I'm working from home, but I have to go every day. You know what I mean? You know, a lot of the times you don't want to compare. I think what teachers are asking, they're just asking that this is recognized. You know, they're virtually learning right now. Why are the same expectations you would have for me while I was in the classroom, you have for me now, when that's not, you know, I need you to be reasonable, right? The same other essential workers. Again, I'm not comparing the two, but in the depths of the virus, if you were a nurse, you were getting paid so much. You were getting paid so much because of the virus. And teachers have already been in this fight to like just to get what they need, to not have to spend my own pocket money to have my materials, those sort of things. So now when you add a pandemic to it, and I think it's just showing society that parents are even giving them more respect. Like, oh man, I didn't know you was doing all this in the classroom. So I think it's just time for us to recognize that and kind of invest more within that workforce.
Kind of a little bit of follow up for both of you. Me and my friends were talking the other day, and we were like, would you rather be a class of 2020 or be class of 2021? And most of us did say class of 2020. Like, we all kind of empathize with them because they didn't get to have a prom, and many didn't get to have a graduation. But we've been struggling since the beginning, and we don't even know if we're going to graduate, or we don't even know if we're going to get a prom after all. And, you know, they did have everything done. They just had to choose. And by the time that, you know, everything was going on, the whole world was supporting them as well. Like, you saw people having virtual concerts, people getting mentions on the radio. And I kind of feel left out a little bit, just saying that in a way, because again, we do get stressed and it's a lot.
Listen,
Don't feel left out. You guys have been working your butts off. Like, be proud of how much you have accomplished.
man, I tell my students that, you know, listen, you're living in history. The history books is going to talk about the class of 2021, and that's a fact. You know what I mean? Like, so the resiliency of it, you guys just got dealt a hand. People, I tell my students a lot, man, I don't know how I would have responded in this situation if it was my graduating class. I was a complainer. You telling me no prom? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not even thinking about college, but I don't get to do a prom. You know what I mean? So listen, the class of 2021, you guys are going to be written about in the history books. And you guys are really going to lead the way to, you know, this generation and beyond.
Thank you. But yeah, again, about teachers, I do appreciate a lot of my teachers. Again, like last year, they were in my school, at least they were kind of like protesting in a way. I remember my teachers wearing this like blue shirt. They had like, you know, issues within the district itself, and for them to like come back and not be appreciated enough in a way, because I understand they do you know, try their best. They talk to, you know, students. I've seen teachers actually drive out of their house to get a book for a student. And, you know, it's something that's not appreciated either. So yeah, we should appreciate both parties, even though we're both confused in this whole situation sometimes.
Yes. So just wondering if there's some like final thoughts. It could be something you just want anyone who's here now or who's going to watch this recording to know about the student experience, the teacher experience, that you just need to get off your chest. Just like one final thought you just want anyone who's watching this now or will watch the recording to know about this pandemic, learning, teaching, supporting students and teachers during this pandemic that you might not have had the chance to say yet.
I'll just say that I'm proud of my generation as well as other, you know, students struggling out there. We've seen this whole year students are out there protesting, being safe even, and, you know, showing that they're the bigger person and that they can speak out their minds on, you know, racial issues. For the longest time, a lot of us did struggle with identity. And now that most of us know who, or even all of us know who we are, we know what we want in our government, we know what we want in our education, we know what we want everywhere, and we will demand power. It doesn't stop just because we got a new president. It will keep going, and I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a mic drop to me.
For real. I just also want to just back up what Chuck was saying about educators. Like, this has been the hardest year of being an educator that I've ever had. Even as a first year educator, when you first got out of college, you don't know what you're doing. But this has been far beyond that. Um, and just know that we care and that we are trying our best, and we know that our kids need lots of love and support during this time too. We're working or trying to work, for the most part, for myself, work as a community. I reach out to parents, I reach out to students, and I just say, like, what can I do? How can I help? um, and I miss having 4 kids in my own home and trying to figure that out with their teachers and figure out how do I help them and how do I support them? So just having each other's backs is, I guess, my bigger point. Support your student and support your teachers.
Mhm.
And I know that there was a question about how do you get parents to be more involved? Parents are tired of this virtual stuff. Um, I wish that there was an answer, but it needs to be a fundamental reason why they need to attend this virtual opportunity. Can you make it condensed and add a few different important things in one meeting to get them there? Can you give out prizes? Can you provide food? Like, if you come, you can pick up food before you go to the meeting virtually. Just what is going to support them and their families as a reason why they should attend that virtual meeting. If some of them have jobs, they've been virtual all day, or they're helping their younger kids be on the computer, or they just had a long day. To be at another meeting virtually is extremely difficult. And we saw this as a deficit before the pandemic. Parents weren't able to participate. Change the time of the meeting. Maybe parents work at night, so have the time at 9 a.m. Or maybe parents are working all day long. Can it be something that's like sent to them at home? So just thinking of different creative ways to support.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think it's, believe it or not, like, just being in virtual learning, I think inadvertently kind of makes parents more involved than they were originally. You know what I mean? If I have kids at home, I need to know their schedule, especially for the little ones in the district. I need to get them set up in front of this. So, and some of the times, a lot of these parents, they had no clue what was going on from 8 to 3. It's just, it was, it still is difficult, and that shouldn't be said lightly. This is difficult. We're asking a lot. Um, but I think we should be ready to continue this conversation and figure out how do we begin to do things differently. Upper Bound, we've been a program for, I think, about 54 years now.
Mm.
And moving forward, I've been bringing that up in the staff meeting, and our staff's been talking about it. What are we going to look like in the next 10 years? Our whole model might have to change, and we have to start thinking about those questions. How are we going to redesign what we do? In terms of me supporting families and our program, again, it's a little easier for us because we're third party, but anytime we needed to, our students needed things for the science experiment that they were doing in the summer, the staff and I, it was to everybody's discretion, but we got our PPE and we tried to deliver as many as we could, as opposed to having that student, that family try to come to campus. So, I think wellness checks are important and are great if you're able to do it, but creating these supports and just acknowledging that these families are going to continue to need support. I think that's going to be important moving forward.
I want to say that I'm really grateful for my teachers, for my counselor, Chalk. I really appreciate everything you do for me. And just to say that a lot of teachers should check up on students. Maybe try not to like punish them because they are absent one day, or maybe they miss like the first 3 class. Ask them if they're doing okay, if their mental health is okay, because some of us really struggle a lot with that. And some students, they don't know how to like talk about this stuff. And having teachers check up on them, it will feel really good for them. it's just that.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of our panelists for sharing your experiences, your words of wisdom, and just being very raw and honest with us all. I hope that everyone who attended this webinar or anyone who will watch it once it's posted to our site kind of will leave with a sense of understanding and a sense of urgency. I hope that, you know, anyone in attendance will join us for our next This is America talk on February 11th at 4:15 for a conversation with students from CSSJ's Civil Rights Movement Initiative. We're alum of this very unique program. We'll talk about the impact of the program on their lives and how they use the past to understand the present. So more conversations about, you know, the last year and kind of how they are navigating that as alum of this program. And so again, thank you to our panelists and thank you to all of our attendees. And I hope you all have a lovely night. And if you like snow, enjoy the snow that is outside. I'm not one of those people. You might be one of those people.
No, sir. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. And it was nice to meet you ladies. You're phenomenal. Keep strong. You got this. Graduation will be great. Just put it into the atmosphere. We're going to have it. It's going to be great.
Thank you guys for the invite. And absolutely, 2021, you guys are different. They're going to be talking about you.
Yeah, again, thank you for listening. And I appreciate the invite. Hopefully it's not the last one.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Nice to see you, Chuck.
All right, guys.
Bye.